So in yesterday night's boxing, we saw two upsets last night. Two upsets. We saw Chocolatito Gonzalez lose, and we also saw Triple G Gennady Golovkin lose. In my opinion, I thought Jacobs won that fight, and I think he boxed his soul out. I think he was really, really good, and I got to give him maximum respect. I mean, I was really disappointed, bitterly disappointed for him when the judges didn't give it to him. And I think he hit the nail on the head when he said they're looking for that big fight, Golovkin versus GGG, and they gave me the X. And that was so true. And I did feel for him because he deserved to win. Whether you're a Triple G fan or a Jacobs fan, the best man should always be given the decision. Now, I wanted Golovkin to win. You know, I like the idea of having this indestructible guy that everybody tries to fight and loses against and proves that he's one of the best middleweights that ever lived. So I wanted him to kind of win. I was living up to that hype. But then when I saw Jacobs and I saw the fight, I thought to myself, you know, he shouldn't have been given the decision, GGG. He shouldn't have been. He lost that fight. And I think it's very unfortunate that Jacobs didn't get the decision, and I think it's a very, very poor reflection on the sport of boxing when it's clearly evident that the reason he didn't win that fight is because you want him to fight Canelo Alvarez, and that's where the money is, and that's what it's blatantly about. Now with Gennady Golovkin and Jacobs, it was close. It wasn't a washout, but I can't see anybody saying that Golovkin won that fight. When you saw Ward versus Kovalev, and people were saying Kovalev was robbed. That I didn't agree with because it was such a close fight. You can't call it a robbery. If it's such a close fight, then how can you call it a robbery? If Kovalev beat Ward by a point, I would have said that's a fair result. If it was a draw, I'll say it's a fair result. If Ward won the fight by a point, I'll say it was a fair result. But in this instance, I don't think it was fair that Jacobs lost that fight. Now, I scored it 115 to 112 in favor of Jacobs, and I thought that going into the fifth round it was even. Going into the sixth round it was even, but in my opinion Jacobs ran away with it. And when you watch the fight, this isn't an analysis of the fight, a round by round analysis, but when you watch the fight, as soon as you kind of walked, as soon as they began fighting, Gennady Golovkin again took center of the ring and he started pressuring Jacobs. But he was pressuring without landing any major significant shots. Yes, he got the knockdown. Yes, he landed with some good shots. But Jacobs landed with equally as good shots. So I don't think you can say that Golovkin deserved to win that fight because of the knockdown, because he didn't do anything after that. Yeah, he caught him with good shots, but so did Jacobs. You can argue for both guys landing successfully. But, Golovkin did a lot of stalking, but he didn't land that many significant shots. It wasn't a complete washout. He didn't put, other than the knockdown, Jacobs in trouble. So in my opinion, I think Jacobs boxed out of his soul. I think he boxed really well. I think his athleticism and his power and his jab and his reach advantage, I think that he beat Golovkin, and I think Golovkin didn't have an answer for his athleticism, for his movement, for his jab. And there were times when Golovkin hit him with one shot and Jacobs answered back with three. It was like Golovkin was looking for that one power shot, and it wasn't coming. And when he was throwing those shots and landing, Jacobs stood there and stood his ground and came back and fired back 3 or 4 shots. And you saw that many times throughout the fight. So, I think Golovkin just couldn't handle his athleticism, couldn't handle the movement, couldn't handle the jab, and he was weary of his power. I think Golovkin felt that this guy is a big puncher, so I don't want to commit too much. But as the rounds went on, I was thinking, okay, so Golovkin's going to pick it up from round 6. He's going to pick it up from round 7, 8. He's going to apply the pressure. But that just didn't happen. Now, at the end of the fight, Jacobs fell to his knees and he fell against the ropes. He looked all the more tired. I have to admit, he looked all the more tired, and he looked like he'd been in a fight more than Golovkin did. But that was because of the style he adopted and the style he used to fight Golovkin. Like, Golovkin was coming forward, looking for that power shot, looking for those couple of power shots, whereas Jacobs was constantly on the move, constantly jabbing, constantly moving, and he's likely to get more tired at the end of the 12 rounds. So that's why he looked a little bit more tired or beat at the end of the fight. But I mean, in my opinion, Golovkin didn't win that fight. I think Andy Lee's assessment of the fight, well, before the fight took place, he predicted that Jacobs could pull off an upset, and he did say something very important. He said Jacobs needs to box and punch at the same time. He needs to rough Golovkin up a little bit, and I think that is very true. I think that, if Daniel Jacobs had imposed himself a little bit more, I think he would have outmuscled Golovkin. I think that he showed him a little bit too much respect. I think that if he did try to kind of push him back, I think he would have been successful. But I think Jacob was concerned that he may have got KO'd or may have got stopped. So I don't think he was that confident going forward and pushing Golovkin back. But I think had he thrown a bit more punches, had he imposed himself a bit more, it would have been more convincing that he should have won the fight. It would have been no doubt in anybody's mind that watched the fight that he would have won it. But because he boxed and boxed on the outside, and Golovkin was coming forward, maybe people thought that, because Golovkin was the aggressor, that he deserved to win the fight. But, it depends what you like. Do you like the aggression and people coming forward, or do you like people boxing on the outside? I personally prefer to see that sort of fight, boxing, sticking and moving, jabbing, movement. So, I think Jacobs won that fight, and I think his cornerman said it. In between rounds, his cornerman said, round by round, if you box him, you beat him. And I think that's what happened. I think he won that fight. I gave Golovkin the last round, but I gave Jacobs the fight by 3 points, 115 to 112. And I think he was robbed, and I'm really disappointed for him. I think it'll be good to see a rematch. I think if Canelo, Alvarez, and Golovkin can make that fight happen and make it happen soon, then by all means, maybe we could see Jacobs in a rematch, whatever happens. But I mean, I think a lot of people will be a little bit more eager to face Golovkin now as a result of that fight, because they will see that he is not indestructible. And I had a funny feeling about that fight. I predicted, if you look at my video before, I predicted that Golovkin was going to win. But come fight night, and when I saw him walk down the aisle, when I realized that he made Jacobs wait, and then I just thought, you know what? Something's not right here. And then after the first round, when Golovkin was sort of, applying pressure but not throwing that many punches, and Jacobs looked comfortable boxing on the outside, and his athleticism and his reach looked to be bothering Golovkin, I thought, this isn't gonna happen. I don't think Golovkin was active enough. He didn't apply enough pressure. He didn't land as many big shots as he should have. But anyway, let me know your thoughts and comments in the section below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.